going to be a 1-hour session as usual. And our topic for today is Ghana, from economic crisis to potential catastrophe. It is very unfortunate that a country with so much talent and resources should be brought to its knees once again with considerable hardship and suffering by its people. For me personally, I think the situation now could be avoided if the political leadership of the country had not denied the fact that the country was in a crisis. Even now that the reality has hit the leadership, the true underlying causes of the crisis are still being denied, rather blaming COVID-19 and Russia-Ukraine war. Ghana does not have either the time or space now to stop the potential precipitous fall in an economic abyss, which can easily become a catastrophe. So today, in this 1-hour session, Dr. Yamson is going to take us through the first 30 minutes, as he's going to take his time to look at the implications for the economy, the governance, institutions, and business during these very difficult and uncertain times, and what urgent actions are needed to be taken. As usual, kindly put your devices on mute to avoid interruptions. You are welcome once again, Dr. Yamson.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us this morning. And again, let me welcome you and with a brief delay in starting the conversation. I hope that this being our last conversation, we will participate fully, and please, when I'm done, ask any questions that you would like to ask. As you were told, I'll speak for roughly 30 minutes, and then we can share the last 30 minutes in a dialogue. First of all, I just want to take a look, and let me say that at the time I put this together, I wasn't aware that the catastrophe was already with us. But maybe I underestimated the extent of what we are facing and what we are going to face in the next few years. We're all aware that the world that we live in is changing very dramatically. And it's being driven by the digital technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, nanotechnology. Indeed, one of the things we have also seen recently is attack on globalization and rather the growth of regionalization and nationalism. But more importantly, we've seen bigger aspirations of millennials and the Z generations. And let me explain. The millennials are all the people who were born between 1981 and 1996, because they were born towards the end of that millennium. And the Generation Z are those who were born between 1997 and around 2020. These generations are very impatient. They are looking for good governance, and they are very concerned about their own personal well-being and their financial independence. We also are aware that there's a big focus on the move away from fossil fuel to green energy, because the whole world is at risk of the rising carbon in the atmosphere, which is causing huge problems for the whole world, with floods and many other things affecting many people around the globe. We also have witnessed the energy crisis which followed the Russian invasion of Ukraine, now turned into a major food crisis around the world. We also have witnessing big changes in the social architecture driven by technology, pandemics, geopolitical wars, and tensions, and of course, the aspirations of the new generations that they speak of. Everywhere in the world, democracy is under threat, and indeed, prior rights movement seem to be gaining ground in many countries, mainly because of the hardship many people are going through, which is being exploited by extremists. We can also see growing trend of transfer from today and yesterday leaders to leaders who are relevant in the new world and the new evolving economy. And this is very important and relevant to our economy. I'll be coming back to that later. And therefore, with all these uncertainties everywhere, now, with all these changes that are going around us, we can see that Ghana's situation is very different, and indeed, crises are getting deeper and deeper. And if you look at the slide on your screen right now, you can see major deterioration. Consumer price inflation, for instance, has gone to 40.4% this year, October, from 12.6% the same period last year, and 12.6% compared with 40% this year. It's a major deterioration. If you look at the producer price inflation, this time this year, 10.6%. This year, 65.2%. And that has come up from 45.6% in just last September to 65.2% in October. And what we have to remember is that producer price inflation will then eventually feed into your consumer price inflation. The CD, we all know, has really been devastated. From January 2nd, the CD was 6.4, and on November 17th, just last month, it has actually joined up to 15.4%. Huge depreciation that has faced that. And interestingly, if you look at the Bank of Ghana rate, it's moved from 14.5% last year, same period, November 2021, to 24.5%. And indeed, as I speak, that's also gone up again to 27%. The same thing you can see from a Ghana reference rate, Treasury rate, the 182 Treasury rate. All these show major deterioration. What this is telling us is that while the world is changing in a more positive direction, our situation in this country is getting worse and worse and worse by the day. And so this confluence of crisis and disruptions is what we can see as a major issue that is facing this country today. And indeed, the recent announcement with the Minister of Finance made, where people who are invested in bonds, particularly institutional investors, are going to face major haircuts. And that has very serious implications for this country, because already we have lost investor confidence. And this is going to deepen it and make it even worse. So let me just make an observation here. You see, there's always a tendency to see economic challenges as temporarily, quickly, and easily reversible. This is not true anymore, especially in our circumstances. The world today is in the midst of a profound economic and financial shift, and so is Ghana. And the better we understand those dramatic changes, the better prepared shall all the players be, so that we can respond more effectively. Therefore, my advice to businesses and my advice to even individuals is that we should avoid misguided optimism. Sometimes we believe that, oh, this is just one of the problems we have faced before in the past. This is different. This is deeper. And this is likely to last a little longer In the past, we will take 3-4 years to recover. Maybe now to be much more, because to get investor confidence back will definitely take a long time. Ghanaians, naturally, we are not very good at saving our money. Now that we were developing that habit, this blow is going to hit that very, very much. And I believe that our economic managers will take a little bit of time to see what we can do. Now, so what has been our response so far? Unfortunately, we have denied the true cause of this crisis for a very long time. And that actually, for me, is one of the basic reasons why we are where we are. If even last year, we had admitted our problem and we had gone to the farm, maybe we will not be where we are, because we may not have had to face the same rigorous fund program that we now need to face. We have not seen any new strategic direction so far, because it's been the same old story, and therefore, even for investors and for businesses in this country, it's difficult to gauge in the near term where government direction is going to be, other than anchoring all our hope in that IMF bailout program. And that, for me, is a tragedy of the situation, because by now, as a country and as people, we should be able to know what problems these issues have created for us and what we need to do to get ourselves out of this, even if we have to get into an IMF bailout. The downside of this bailout, the debt restructure I've just talked about, is that it will depress savings and investments for that. Because we will entertain more doubts, more uncertainty.
Really?
Of course, more fear. The upside impact is what we have been promised, macro stability. If we can create that stability quickly, then maybe it will take us a little shorter time to recover from where I sit. Even that will take time to bear. And of course, our politics have become very dysfunctional and creating more uncertainties and tension. We also are aware of the aggressive rising cost of living, which has created a basic hardship for many Ghanaians. And therefore, all these put together will create the impression that we are not able to generate any confidence in anybody, even more so in our investors. Just this morning, I read that one of our big mines has been downgraded again, and those things can really cause problems, because the more of these issues that arise from time to time, the more confidence investors are losing in the country. And I'm not talking about only foreign investors. I'm also talking about local investors. And we must be aware that sustained hardship could lead to disruptive consequences. I don't know how long, and we are people that have great patience, but sometimes it's very difficult to sustain the hardship that they take. But the good thing is that we still have the opportunity to stop the deterioration. Now, first of all, the IMF program is intended only to provide the country with time, space, and renewed investor confidence to reshape Ghana's economy. That is what the program is intended to be, to give us the time, the space, and renewed investor confidence. So it is important that we leverage that fully in the short and the medium term, so that we can recreate the stability that we lost and allow businesses and both local and external to begin to reinvest in the country. Because we should always remember that government alone cannot build this country. It needs private sector money. these major investors, and therefore we need to ensure that we leverage the program more seriously and more fully. The second thing that I think we still can leverage is that we should provide a radically transformative economic model that creates long-term sustainable resilience. And it is important because we are here now because all these years we have not been able to build resilience into this economy. We have always been rain-fed agriculture. Now, we should identify clear core pillars to reshape this economy. And we should build the pillars of agribusiness for self-sufficiency for food industry and value addition for export. It is all well and good to talk about growing agriculture for food and jobs. If we are not attractive, if we are not exporting, and if we become over-dependent on food, then remember Ghana today is the one country in Africa that is over-dependent on import of food. And this cannot, because we have all the Arabola. Why must we? So this needs to change. And we need to depoliticize agriculture and agribusiness and make sure that the strategy we put together is credible. And we should then action and implement very seriously. Today, manufacturing is changing. It's driven by artificial intelligence. But if you go to the Ghanaian factories today, some of them were built 30 years ago. They are totally irrelevant today. They're expensive, and that is why most of the product produced locally turn out to be very expensive. We need a national agenda, a national strategy which says we are going to build the factories of the future, because all over the world, countries are building factories for the future. The factories that were built 30 years ago, 40 years ago, even some of them 50 years ago, are today totally irrelevant. And that's why we need to begin to think very radically. We can talk about local industry, and I believe in local industry, but we should have local industry to begin to think that the products of tomorrow will never be relevant today in our market. And therefore, we should join the rest of the world to begin to build the factories of the future. Factories which are driven by the green economy and driven by artificial intelligence and driven by digitization. Those are the factories that will make us also competitive, because we cannot just tell Ghanaians, buy locally made Ghanaian products, even if they are 2 times, 3 times, 4 times more expensive than what they compare us. You are punishing Ghanaian consumers. So we should have a service in the next 5 to 10 years. We are going to have Ghanaian manufacturers to retool and to bring their manufacturing, their factories into the modern world. We can also now have a more direct and more serious strategy behind services, financial services, medical services, education services. I was surprised to know how many people from our sub-region actually seek medical care in Ghana. But there's no official strategy behind it, just like India has done. Tourism in India is driven by basically education and medical services. There's no reason why we can't do that, because we have better infrastructure in Ghana, even in the state they are today, than many of our neighboring countries. And therefore, we can leverage that in addition to arts and culture in the tourism area. Now, when we have identified these core pillars, we then have to define the enablers. And please, I will spend a bit of time on the enablers, because very often our governments have written elaborate plans. They don't work. They have never worked. And that's why they have brought us to where we are. Now, it is because
we don't always understand that when you have put the strategy together, there are things that you must have. There are things that must happen before that strategy can be effectively executed. And the first one is macro stability. Every time in this country, you can go back to our history and see. We go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. I think we are afraid of the future. And our macro instability has been something which has basically become predictable. Because every time we have elections, a year after or 2 years after, we are in a crash. And we haven't learned the lesson that this will not help us. It doesn't matter who is the leader. It doesn't matter the kind of people in government. It doesn't really matter the quality of the strategy. If we don't have macro stability in this country, we have been to IMF, 7 times or so before. And this is our 8th time. We will be there again after the next 5 years or so. If we don't do the things that we need to do. The second is technology innovation. Today, what is driving the world is technology and innovation. If you look at Africa, and I'm not limiting this one only to that, our contribution to innovation is literally below 2% of what is done in the whole world. And we're talking about a whole continent. When it comes to Ghana, our contribution is literally zero. Today, we have a few young people who in the technology space are developing things, but even they are doing it on their own. They're not doing this because there's a national strategy that they are following and from which they are getting support. So if we don't believe that we need to support our young people to go out there and fight, then we may not go very far. The second thing, the third thing I want us to look at is that we need to fight greed and corruption generally in this country. Most of the problems we have are the result of greed and corruption. Now, unless we are prepared to stand up and say, we will not do this, we will really, truly make sure that we protect this country and that we will not allow our personal interests to undermine the interests of this country. And that when we are put in charge of anything, that we will protect it. Now, we have had many, and it's not now this administration, many administrations past have all promised to fight corruption, but nobody seems to have the guts to fight it and fight it genuinely. And if we go around on this, we will sign many agreements that eventually will come and hit us and destroy the economy. So that is one of the things that I am placing a lot of emphasis on, fighting greed and corruption. Now, we also need to ensure that because the world economy is changing, we need to develop new skills to underpin the economic transformation that we are looking for. Unless we do that, then unfortunately, we will create an economy where the people that are coming up don't have the skills to be used by employers throughout the economy. Whether it is agribusiness, whether it is the manufacturing, whether it's in tourism, whether it's in services, the skills today are totally obsolete. And we need to define very clearly what we want to do going forward and what skills we need to do so that when we get there, we have our people ready, prepared to step in there and rebuild this country. And more importantly, as a country and as businesses operating in this country, we need to be resilient in finance, in our operations, in technology, in organization, in our business models, and in our reputation. I mean, if I take these one by one, which will take the whole time. But let me just say that. Let me just talk about the last item of reputation. We are acquiring a very bad reputation as a country, because everybody knows that every 4 years we'll destroy our country and take 3 years to refill. We say these things and we don't see the damage we are doing ourselves. Now, if you are an investor sitting in Hong Kong, sitting in South Africa, sitting in America, then you want to come to Ghana and you look at our history and you see that, oh, wow, every 4 years I've been in trouble. And if I spent $1 million January last year, today it's worth it selling nothing. And I read this morning that even our city has become a junk currency. That's not the reputation you want to be for a country. And I also think that we need a new political framework. You see, I've said often and often that our constitution is part of our problem. Because our constitution gives too much power to the presidency, to the executive. And that power is then used, and all our presidents, except a few of them, to our detriment. And where we are today is because we have a president who appointed everybody. And although some of them have not performed, they still are at post. But the fact that the president appoints everybody, literally everybody in the public sector, at the senior level, is not good for this country. And especially if then that is driven by a governance architecture which is weak, then sorry, and people can go away, commit crime and go away simply because they are protected. And I think that we need a new political framework. We need a constitution that emphasizes accountability. Our constitution today does, because all the institutions that are supposed to fight corruption are funded through the executive. And if the executive doesn't give you money, what do? You won't be effective. So it is important that we did a constitutional review a few years back. It was never implemented. I think we should revisit that. We should be honest as a country and see that, no, we cannot go on like this forever. Unless, and what has happened this year and this time should be clear to us that unless we are prepared as a people to take very serious, very radical action in the way our politics is framed and the ways our economy is, we will not go anywhere. And I'm hoping that one of the things we will do as a nation is not only to look forward to a macro stability, but also to look forward to a new political framework which makes everybody who works for government accountable. Because we need to build an equitable, inclusive society. An inclusive society where only a few people benefit from government and majority of the people don't, it's not a society that you want to live in. And therefore, to achieve that, we should be uncompromising in our adherence to good governance in the public sector, again, and also in the private sector. Now, above all, we must attract FDI seriously, and you must attract local private investors very seriously, because a lot more money sits in the private sector. And unless we have an environment that the private sector can trust, and not trust for 1 day, and not trust for 1 month, and not trust for 1 year, but can trust for 10 years, because nobody builds a factory for 1 year. You build a factory, you are going 30, 40, 50 a year. So if you are in an environment where you can't trust what's going to happen, then, and that's the only way we are going to attract foreign direct investment, and we're also going to encourage local private investors. Right now, a lot of people who have put their money in government bonds will have serious problems, and those monies probably could have gone to support local private sector. Now, let me go back to, so let me then move on to, when we have selected what we want to do from my previous list, I just want to give advice on 5 things. If you want to execute anything, we must execute it with credibility and with passion. There are so many initiatives that have passed through this country in this administration, previous administrations, which were just put together for fun, sometimes for the sake of politics and popularity. And so their execution have not come with credibility and with passion. And also, even more important, their execution have been hampered by corruption. So when you decide that you will build a new practice of the future, then make sure that you are actually credible in the way you want to do it. And let's say to our government that they should stay focused on their clear purpose and vision. Why do you come to government? You come to government because you want to do something for the country, you want to do something for the people of Ghana. You don't come to, don't take over the country simply because you want power to do what you like. But we must have a clear purpose and we must have a clear vision. We talk about the East Asian countries. Each one of those leaders had a very, very clear vision and very clear purpose. Now, on this continent, we all talk about Rwanda. The Rwandan president has a very clear vision of what he wants to do for his country. Now, the Zambian president is demonstrating also, even when you are down there, you can come up and you can pursue a vision that will benefit your people. So whether you are a leader of the private sector, a leader in government, you must have a clear purpose and you must have a clear vision, which is positive for your people. And then we have to execute with speed, with courage, with clarity, and with transparency. And for me, transparency is even more important. We have become a country where accountability now is probably not important to many people. But unless we are transparent in your dealing, then hang on, nobody is going to trust this country and its businesses. But we should begin also to develop leaders who are rooted in tomorrow. You know, we have many leaders in this country and indeed in Africa who are rooted in today and yesterday. The way the world is going is not even relevant. They don't even see it. Because if they see it, they won't do some of the things that they do. But you see, if you look at the millennials and the Z generation, these generations, and millennials are all those who were born between 1981 and 1996. And the Z generations are those who were born after 1997 to about 2000. They are impatient. They want security. They want financial security, right? They want transparency. They want to live in a world where they can trust each other. Now, if you look at everything around us, our leadership don't seem to understand that even the new generations that are coming up, the many, many young boys and girls who are coming up, who belong to these generations, will not tolerate the things that we have been doing in the past and for many years. So we need to begin to think. I mean, I look at leadership in this country, whether in the private sector or in the public sector. I worry a lot because the leadership we have are rooted in yesterday. They think that they can't do what they like, they can do all that before, but the world is changing around us and we need to change as well. Now, we should then begin to rebuild trust and experience in the experience of our citizens and our employees. And we need, even more importantly, to create new culture, new behaviors, and new values if we want to transform this country. We can never transform this country if we are going to go on behaving the same way we have been doing in the last 60-something years, because it has not done anybody any well, any good. So if we are talking about transformation, new economy, then we have to understand that we also need to embed that with the new culture, new behaviors, and new values. So finally, let me just say that failure is not an option. And we need to avoid the perfect storm.
Internet or something.
Because what is ahead of us doesn't look good. The new generations are typically impatient and they have no time for all the things we have been doing in the past. Growing unemployment is a recipe for social instability. And we need to rebuild Ghana's broken infrastructure driven by aggressive sustained growth. So what we have been doing in the past will not help us. And if you look at this country, our roads, our medical services, our educational institutions, I mean, everything looks terrible. And it is because all these years, we have not grown sustainably to accumulate enough savings to invest in our people, in our infrastructure. So unless we do that, and we do that passionately, then we can only continue to suffer as we have been suffering in the past. And we need to focus, when we are doing anything, we should talk about creating value. Because it's only when you have created value that you can save some, and you can then invest with what you have saved. And don't let us go around the politics with things that we know will destroy value. Initiatives that we know will not create any value in this country. But simply because it sounds sweet and nice politically, it doesn't mean that it will add value to this country. And why are we now highly indebted? We are indebted because we have not created enough value for us to be able to do the things we want to do from our own resources. And it's a big lesson for us. And for all of our citizens, politicians, business people, we all need to understand that unless we change our attitude, unless we understand that if we don't create value ourselves, then it means somebody, we started with a beautiful vision, Ghana beyond aid. Now we have now become Ghana over dependence on aid again, because IMF, that's what it means. And we should put Ghana first and Ghanaians first in everything we do. I thank you very much, and I'm ready for your questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Yamson, for that intriguing discussion and presentation. You can send in your thoughts, you can send in your chats, your questions, and then again, you can also raise a hand in the chat to share your thoughts and then also ask questions as well. But since we don't have any questions yet, I believe we all agree with Dr. Yamson. So I'll begin to call out some names. So that we can share our thoughts with the presentation that Dr. Yamson has just shared with us. I see. Okay, so we have a question here from Pastor Nelson. Pastor Nelson wants to know how quickly Ghana can come out of the unprecedented near catastrophe situation we are in now.
Very simple. I think, I don't know whether it is near catastrophe. I think we are already in the catastrophe. So, but thank you very much for the question. Right now, I would like to say that there will be no quick fix to the crisis we are in, because we need to go through a fund program to stabilize the economy. And then on the back of that, we can then rethink our own economic philosophy, how we want this country to go, where we want it to go, and how we want it to go. But I think in the short term, first of all, I think we need the government to be very clear in accepting that this problem was not the outcome of the Russia-Ukraine war, neither was it the outcome of COVID-19. It was the outcome of our overborrowing, and indeed the outcome of the fact that we borrowed to the extent that we could no longer service. Then what happened? The rating agencies started to downgrade long-term credit worthiness, and now it's affected some banks as well. So we need to quickly pull that back, because if we go into a fund program and we can demonstrate debt sustainability, then creditors and investors will then begin to gain confidence in the economy. Until we do that, that's not going to happen. So the government has said, we'll go there. The first thing they have done to build, to ensure debt sustainability, which is a requirement in this particular kind of IMF program, is that investors in government bonds, and I understand individual investors in the local bonds are not affected. But literally, every investor is going to be affected, because whether it is a pension fund or not, the pension funds only manage money aggregated from individuals. So even though that is necessary, I would have thought that the first thing the government should have done was to have discussion, engagement, so that it didn't have to come to anybody as a surprise. I mean, to wait a day before or 2 days before we make an announcement to engage is not the best. And that is why we are seeing all this agitation coming up all over the place. I believe that the government can sound credible to all the institutional investors, so that they can, as the Prime Minister has always been saying, that they can all work together. Because we keep saying we're all in this together. It's true, we are all in the mess together, but getting us out of the mess, the leadership must come from government. And it's important that government becomes credible to investors, particularly investors in government bonds, because we need to go over that hurdle to be able to then get an IMF program in place. And as I said earlier, once the farm program is in place, we must leverage it credibly. You see, in the past, we have only used IMF program as a break. As soon as the program is over, we go back to our bad old days. And I think today, and for all of us, including people, especially people in government, they must understand that when you do these things, you are not doing it because you believe that everybody else will not understand. In fact, I remember that the first time we were downgraded, the Minister of Finance said there was no reason for the downgrade. Until then, the downgrades multiplied. So we need to create credibility in ourselves as a people and as a country by doing what we say we shall do. Because if you say gather beyond it, then don't go and borrow and now take us back to where we were before, where we were over-dependent on loans and aid and grants. That's exactly where we are today. So if you ask me, how can we come out quickly? We have to agree a farm program as quickly as we can, stabilize the economy, and then think through carefully what kind of economy do we want? Because we also know that we are here because we are totally over-dependent on almost everything, from imports of merchandise, from imports of food items, regrettably. That's why I brought us here. So once we get a farm program, at the time when we're stabilizing the economy, we must also now look critically at what economy do we want 10, 20 years from now, and what should we do today, next year, the next year, for the next year, to get us there. Because it is regrettable that we should train so many young people, nurses, whatever, and then we don't have jobs for them. So we spend our small resources and then train for the rest of the world who take the people for free. We're not doing ourselves any good. And what we are in today is really a catastrophe. And hopefully we'll get out of it.
Okay, thank you. Anastasia wants to know how we, as the citizens, can ensure government reduces expenditure, stay incorruptible within the framework of the current constitution.
I was actually hoping the government should have started
from drastic reduction and cutting of expenditure. I always say, if you take about a company that is bleeding, the first thing you do is to cut costs. But we are sitting as if nothing has happened. So we want to carry on as if nothing has changed. And a lot has changed. We don't just have money in this country to do anything unless we go and borrow. We have to borrow literally every week or every other week on the local market for government to be able to run. That's not the best way, the best place to be for any country. So we need to understand that our government is overbloated. There's no need for all these huge numbers of ministers and deputy ministers. I mean, to the extent that I read somewhere that Minister Agriculture alone has 8 deputy ministers. I mean, what would they be doing? And yet go to all the huge, the big multinationals. You see, the people who make the policy, they probably are 8, maximum 12. They will tell you if you go beyond 30, you are inefficient. So why do we have over 100 ministers, deputy ministers? I mean, a country of 30 million people. So I think we should be serious as a country and go back, sit back and say, look, these are the things that we did that have brought us to where we are. What should we stop doing? What should we begin to do? And what should we do more? If we can answer those 3 questions, it will be clear to us that the things that, most of the things that were doing in the past are probably not relevant. They are the things that are brought us where we are. So what I would say is that, yes, I would also agree with you. That's why I think we should have started even before we tackle the issue of bonds. The bonds is expensive because that will allow you to go to get a farm program. But demonstrate credibility even to the people of Ghana. Government must cut its cost of governing this country. Just to obey.
Okay, thank you. Shalom says, thank you very much for the presentation. And his issue was that there seemed not to ever, the country never seemed to have a national plan for development that is followed through each government that comes. So what he wants to know is that, how do we actually put in a place or a plan for industrialization and economic development that will be followed irrespective of the government of the day?
Okay, thank you very much. That is why I spoke about, revisiting our constitution. Because you see, our constitution says to every new president that he should go to parliament and tell them of their new economic plans and rest of it. And almost literally, every president has come and presented a completely different economic plan from what his predecessor or the previous government have done. I mean, let me tell you, I was a student at Lebanon when Nkrumah was overthrown. A successive government partly were misled by the fund and the World Bank, who said, literally, every factory Nkrumah had built was not useful, so they should be closed up. That's why we sold a lot of the factories. And now, I remember very well that we had a rattan factory at Aguna Bubikuma, because that whole area is a rattan growing area, but it was closed down simply because the incoming government didn't take time, sit down to reflect, why did this past government build all these rural factories? They decided that because they were built by a government which had declared itself socialist, everything that government had done was not good. Well, close them down. Some were so, some were just literally closed down. So the question about is interesting because if we don't change that constitution, that problem will remain with us because the constitution requires any new president to do that. So unless we have a modest president who says, okay, my predecessor did ABC. I mean, we know of schools and hospitals which have remained in the bush simply because one government attempted to build them. The new government won't go and complete because then the government that started it will get the praise. I mean, and therefore, we have not only wasted time, we have also wasted money to build those, to put cement blocks on the ground. And simply because a previous government did it, I'm not going to touch it. Because the constitution says I have to go to parliament and tell them what I have to do. Why should I follow somebody? So the fundamental reason is in the constitution. We need to amend the constitution to make room for the plan, the kind of plan you are talking about, so that new governments don't throw away what previous governments have done, simply because they claim the constitution expects them to do so.
Okay. Isaac also wants to know that what are some of the expected impacts of government debt restructuring on our local financial sector? And also if there are any direct repercussions to be suffered by individual depositors and contributors in the banking and pension sector.
Well, I know that, well, the impact will be very serious, but I know that in the address, investments in treasury bills are not affected at all. And individual bondholders are also not affected at all. So if you have your money in your savings account, it's not affected. If you have money in your current account, it's not affected. The debt restructuring has to do with institutional investors in government bonds. But as I explained earlier, if a Ghana pension bond has invested in a bond, that pension fund is an aggregation of individual Ghanaians who have made contributions to that pension fund. So if that pension fund gets a cut, or like we have heard, the next 2 years there's no interest, then blah blah blah. So 5 years before you get any money paid. That means that if you retire between now and the time that they are going to pay the first 17%, what's going to happen to your pension fund and the pension fund administration? So I think that that is why it has been important for government to have engaged all the creditors much longer. I mean, to say that, oh, we need this before this time so that we can get this another year. So I would say we should be very careful. We don't derail the economy even further. Because you see, when people are already anxious about what's going to happen to them, if you add this, now I know people will say, even if you are born in the bank, no, we are going to lose. But we all know that is not true. So there has been something wrong with the communication. And there has been a lack of engagement, which has created this problem. So I would advise, and I'm sure the government is aware of this, hopefully they will take notice and they will do something very quickly. And they calm tempers and anxiety down. So people understand where they stand, rather than simply behave as if, you either take it or you leave it. That will not be very good.
Okay, our time is almost due, so I'll take a last question. Pastor Nelson wants to know if a program like Free SHS is suspended, can it play a significant role in making funds available to government to use for other projects? He also wants to know if the IMF can propose the suspension of the Free SHS program.
So I don't know whether the fund can do it because the fund doesn't impose a program on anything. The fund doesn't impose programs on anybody these days. You come with your program and then discuss with the fund. And if the fund believes that your program will restore the sustainability and will macro stability, then they will help you to manage it. So if whether we will suspend free SHS or not, it's a choice for government to make. Nobody can make that choice for them. As far as I know, the government has said it will never happen. But then they have to show the fund how they will fund it. Because if you are going to borrow money to fund it, then it's not going to solve our problem. So I don't know the answer. But if you ask me, I would say we should revisit the program. Because it's not everybody in the SHS who can't afford the fee they are charging. That is not true. Because there are people who have been to international schools paying dollars. They find themselves in, A-class schools like Spain, Adesada, St. Augustine, Wesley Girls, and suddenly they can't pay, and government should pay for them. I think that there are things we can revisit and do, and to reduce the burden. But the burden on the budget is huge. But that's the only thing. All these things about youth in afforestation, youth in this, we should review them. What value have they created? If they haven't created any value, just cut them off. Because we need to lighten the budget so that government can have surplus. If they are not going to have, I think a balanced budget will be better than going to parliament. And I also blame parliament. They sit there and they approve all these budgets that they know are going to create problems. And suddenly they are standing aside and telling that. Were they not the ones who approved all the budgets that the Prime Minister went to read? So we need to be careful. That's why I believe that we should come together. Because one of the questions you asked is that, and I think it was on radio yesterday or so, will any government that comes today decide that they don't want the farm program that this is that agreed or not? Government is a continuum, so that will continue. But I believe that I agree with you. Government should have started with cutting its own cost to demonstrate to Ghanaians and everybody that they are serious. So you can't go on like nothing has happened.
I will ask the final one. Sylvia wants to know the possible impact of tax mobilization on economic recovery.
Now, we have been told consistently that in terms of domestic revenue collection, we are behind other West African countries. I don't know to what extent that is true, but I think for me, one thing that I find difficult in Ghana is the complexity of the tax administration. You see, recently the Supreme Court gave a ruling that if GRA gives you assessment, go and pay 30%, and then you can complain or whatever. But we also know that many occasions, GRA has given assessment which they themselves come around to realize that are not true. So our tax administration is too complex and burdensome. So we need to be, and I remember in the 2019 Article 4 consultation, it was one of the issues that the fund raised for Ghana government. Simplify your tax collection. Let everybody know clearly what their tax obligations are. You ask the importer, they say if you go to the port, something you imported for 2 seasons suddenly becomes 10 seasons and everything else is stuck. Why are they complaining? They are complaining because they don't understand the basics and they don't understand how to calculate. So let's simplify our tax administration. Of course, if we're citizens or if we are doing business in Ghana, we have an obligation to pay tax. Then let's simplify it. And let us leave tax administration to where anybody can just get and impose a tax on you and say, go and pay 30% before you come and talk to you. You're not attracting any investor when you behave like that.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Yamson, and thank you everyone for joining. You can watch a playback of this session on our YouTube page, Yamson and Associates.